Hi there. This is a preview of sorts for my House of the Dragon Season 1 post-season overview. That I said in my Season 1 finale review, I'm just reviewing this in its capacity as a single episode. I'm going to make a full season review or retrospective later, but that I want to see everyone else's retrospectives first, from the book fan sites, from mainstream media sites, from other YouTubers. I'm in no rush to do a retroactive overview of everything and the more fine points. It's easier to yell about how the later seasons of Game of Thrones are making basic mistakes than, wow, a real adaptation that we can pick over refinements on. That's a problem you want to have. So when I do make this, it'll be like an hour-long podcast, but I realized I could race off a really quick video listing not even points of criticism, but my only points of concern for the whole season. And this was a running list that I kept through the whole thing. I didn't just retroactively come up with this list, I was counting it throughout the run. Now, the thing is, when Game of Thrones was getting bad, this always stuck with me that in season 5, few channels even wanted to acknowledge it was getting bad. One of the few news sites that did was IO9, and they made a really good review pointing out these are all the problems, listing off the politics doesn't matter as much anymore, the characters are getting one-dimensional, there aren't logical consequences to things, and it's just, we were doing the same thing because we were in denial at the time, not blaming IO9. They were roundabout describing all of the symptoms rather than the core problem. It's as if you were in a house that was on fire, and rather than your answer, what are your problems? Fire. If you were listing off, well, it's kind of smoky in here, it's a little hot, I can't touch things where it's dangerous, the power is going, there is a fire. It covers all of the symptoms you see. So I'm not just making a list of points that worked or didn't. It was so weird in later seasons that people wouldn't, refuse to acknowledge the core problem is they chose to abandon the remaining books, or they're shilling the celebrity actors rather than focusing on the story, or they don't know how camera work functions. And just stumbling through, not really seeing the big picture, trees for the forest kind of thing. So I actually, when possible, I try to condense these into one big point, which is the fundamental thing the other symptoms stem from. You'll see immediately what I mean. That there were two big points of concern, really one. The second, I actually think they did well this season. It's just an ongoing concern. And then there's two minor points that were like specific things that came up in specific episodes. I don't know if they'll even be able to revisit them again. Point one, which is the only one anyone's talking about, it's pretty obvious, is they needed 3 more episodes. They wanted 3 more episodes. And I'm not angry about this. They were fighting with the studio over this. That when George R. R. Martin himself says we needed 3 more episodes in a blog post, what is there to argue about? And it's the things that Martin himself listed off in that blog post, that we needed more time to show Rhaenyra falling in love with Harwin. We needed time to show Daemon marrying Elena and having adventures with her in the Free Cities. A third one I'd add to that you see what I'm saying about the symptoms versus the cause. Kristen Cole not being punished for killing Joffrey Lonmouth falls into that of you needed another episode. The episode 6 should have been the aftermath of the wedding and showing all 3 of these points. They're one big point, not 3 different symptoms. And I think it works well enough. You get the impression it was out. You need to show Allison put in a word for him because he's on her side now. And they made up some excuse. So that, a few other things, even people yelling about, I've already said this, Rhaenys bursting through the floorboards on her dragon in episode 9 felt incoherent, though they do explain it in episode 10. I already talked about this in my review. I get what you were trying to do, and retroactively, I see it was a story arc of her gradually coming over to Rhaenyra and being hesitant at first. Okay, this isn't even a bad idea on paper. People going, oh, it's season 8 stuff. This wasn't for spectacle. People going, oh, the core reason that happened is for spectacle. The core reason is they wanted to give Rhaenys more to do, and they didn't have enough scenes to set it up. I said if they had a few more scenes setting it up, if they had the children there, if they had more scenes of Rhaenys going, I'm not even sure if I'm on Rhaenyra's side, would I start a war for her? Just a few more things in there. They didn't just do it for spectacle. We know that if it was for spectacle, it wouldn't fit Rhaenys that she has this clearly laid out story arc. Well, the problem is it isn't very clearly laid out until you look at it retroactively. But I get what they were trying to do. They just needed more time to do it in. And really, episode 8, which many are saying is the best of the season, is a microcosm of this problem. And I've said this before, that when you listen to the interviews director Geeta Patel gave, she said, even if you think this is perfect, I had to cut scenes from this for time and pacing. Like, there were supposed to be Daemon and Otto scenes at the dinner where they're pretending to be nice for Varys' sake. Olivia Cook said one of her favorite Alicent scenes of the entire season was that she shoos away Kristen Cole at the beginning of the dinner, and very sharply, even though he's on her side, that something like she's making an effort to be nice to Rhaenyra, or at least pleasant, so maybe I shouldn't have her betrayed ex-lover hanging around the dinner. It would make too much tension, so she sends him away and he's annoyed. So it's a nuance of Alicent just trying not to be antagonistic. They cut that for time. Again, I said episode 8, despite how great it is, should have been 2 episodes, because the second one would have been able to set up the rainy stuff in episode 9 more. And even it's just, I can't believe it's this good. Because, as she said, the director Patel said, I had to deal with a 6-year time skip introducing the young adult versions of all the children characters, and a dinner that's the last time all these characters are going to be in one place together, all of them together at the same time. And this was just this Herculean task. This is why it's the only episode she directed the whole season, because it was a ton of work. They needed 3 more episodes for pacing reasons. And I've even, partially I'm racing this off because I saw that Supercuts Delight put out a really good, short 10-minute review of the season. And even he said, given the structure of the source material, this isn't even a criticism. And I agree that there are time skips in the Rogue Prince novella. To tell this story, things had to move a little fast. They should have had more episodes, but they were trying, and through a lot of effort, managed to make it pretty much work. That Benioff and Weiss couldn't even handle telling a story that didn't have time skips in it. They managed to do a very difficult task. It's not even a book with time skips, it's an outline with time skips. And it works pretty well. A lot of this is just because I guess people say a feature of my channel is I bother to read a lot of the interviews, and it sounds like they're putting the effort in. And from the director interview, not just Condell, that a lot of time and effort went into squeezing as much in as possible. And they were aware this was an issue. And on top of that, the HBO, the original version they wanted, the old HBO, when Carly Rae was making the first attempt to do Dance of the Dragons in 2017, they wanted to start with the death of Viserys. Ryan Condell is the one in our corner, as the fans, the one going, he was arguing with HBO, it needs to start earlier. It needs to start with the Great Council and Rhaenyra's mother Emma's death. You need to show the deteriorating relationship between Rhaenyra and Alicent over 20 years, and the formation of these court factions to tell the story right, because it's a generational family drama. So this writing staff is on our side for once, that they were the ones pushing for more episodes. So it's a weird feeling of, I'm not yelling at the showrunner, I'm mad at this. I don't even blame the studio that much. I mean, the new people in charge, it was following up on the franchise is in a pretty bad place. It is difficult to do time skips. They said it wasn't because it was confusing, but because you have any idea how hard it is to cast 2 sets of the same lead actors. And I agree that it's a miracle that they got Millie and Emma are so well paired together, as are Olivia and Emily Carey. That is really difficult. So I understand their hesitance. So there aren't any villains in this story, but the moral is, now that season 1 is a breakout hit, I hope that this changes their attitudes towards the later seasons. It was very strange when a couple of months before the premiere, they first said, well, how long is it going to run? And they said 3 to 4 seasons, but we'll see what happens. Well, my immediate reaction was, well, they mean 4, maybe 5, but they're lowballing it because this franchise is considered dead right now. And it's weird, so many people went with, well, therefore they must want 3. Well, they should go with 3. We don't want to stretch it thin. I'm pausing for emphasis. When was stretching the material thin ever a problem for this franchise? Game of Thrones, some of their best seasons were seasons 3 and 4 when they split a large book in half, one half per season. Season 5, even the TV fans think was really bad, or one of the lower ones, because they burned through 2 books in one season, not because it was good, because they wanted to be done with it. That they didn't, and it's that meme that developed is just a set of assumptions that, oh, well, George R. R. Martin, it's Martin's fault, they ran out of material. They burned through books 4 and 5. Just say, someone says it, just go, Sansa, Dorne, even the Ironborn stuff got really truncated with Euron. They didn't run out of material, and we just keep having to, it's like cult deprogramming. We have to keep repeating that. They didn't run out of material. They didn't have the material stretched thin. It's counterintuitive, that's why people don't believe it. They willfully abandoned the source material or even outline that Martin gave them of future events. And if the, parts of 6 or maybe even season 7 seemed slow and like they were treading water, it wasn't because they were stretching the material thin, it's because they abandoned the material. And even then, it was badly rushed. I was never able to verbalize this. Quinn's ideas on Twitter a couple of months ago just said, it was so strange how season 5 felt both very rushed and very slow simultaneously. It was very bizarre. Like, you'll have just a 10-minute scene of Arya slowly washing a body, and then burn through all this material about Dorne or Cersei and politics and stuff. You have to mentally step back and realize they're pandering Maisie Williams for Emmy Awards. That there's these slow, tedious, pandering the actor scenes that aren't actually going anywhere. And our assumption, because we're sane people, is even into season 7, oh, this is a filler scene. No, they put a ton of effort and time into filming the perfect facial expression for the actors. They did this pervasively. And it feels like it's filler. It's not. They threw out story to do the face scenes of the mugging for the camera. But stretching the material out was never a problem. It is a concern that this is an odd case, that this is an outline, not a full book. So there is, one of my concerns was, will the dialogue be good or not? Supercuts Delight mentioned that we didn't think the dialogue would be this good, but it is, because a lot of it isn't from the book. That, if you read World of Ice and Fire and then Fire and Blood, I don't know what everyone in the audience here has read, the Rogue Prince novella is short, and it's an outline covering 20 years, and they basically adapted it into season 1. So you could justifiably say, well, there isn't that much source material, because if you had a page going, these are things that happened during the Andal invasions, for example. You had a single Microsoft Word single-spaced page summarizing sweeps of history on the scale of hundreds of years. That's both not a lot of material, and I don't see how I can cover such a sweep of history in one season. See what I'm saying? So, if you're looking at the material and going, there's not much characterization for Daeron the Daring, he'll probably sustain one episode at best, or Cregan Stark doesn't do that much in the early episodes, or even Jane Arryn. But you get a feel for the character that if you've really... Tell me in the comments. This is one of the things I really want you to comment on. If you've read it, you get the germ of an idea that you can tell this is a bigger idea in Martin's head, and I hope someone else gets to realize it, that Cregan Stark, Jane Arryn, the way fans develop their own backstories for things, and it's half fanon. The Blackwoods. Ben Blackwood is Aunt Allie Blackwood. In our minds, they're major characters who have they're POV characters with entire story arcs. But you can read the book and go, well, this will be like a 3-season thing. It's guideposts that the actors... Martin himself outright saying for Sons of the Dragon about Maegor the Cruel and his brother that's a one-shot novella, and he said this could be 3 books, 3 TV seasons if you go by a book per season. They didn't give an estimate for Fire and Blood, but they've generally been doing. There's basically 2 chapters actually in season 1, because the coup chapter is the second one, and there's 8 chapters on the Dance of the Dragons. So I could see how you could argue, well, it's roughly 2 chapters per season minimum. But if you add in all the subplots from the side characters that aren't as developed, like the Targaryen characters are developed, but the side ones not as much. But we would like to round out Cregan Stark and Jane Arryn and Daeron the Daring a bit more. That'll take more episodes. So it's not just book fans versus. I've even seen like Red Team Review and Preston Jacobs going, we don't want to stretch it thin. But guys, we have seen that stretching it thin is not the problem. And because there's a definitive end point, I wouldn't mind if they added one more, not like 2 more than necessary, but like 1 more in there to round out subplots. Because if anything, the complaint this season was they're rushing through too fast. So it was, because if you're really a hardcore, I'm one of the handful of channels that was really hardcore breaking this down, and I was saying a year ago, they can't get to the death of Viserys by the end of season 1. There's too much to cover. And how would I pad it out into 2 seasons? You have to think outside the box. It isn't 20 episodes worth of material, but it was like 13 episodes worth of material. And maybe to air in 2 batches, but that's water under the bridge at this point. So the issue is, moving ahead, Martin, in the blog post where he talked about that, said we need 4 seasons, 10 episodes each minimum. And at the same time said season 1 should have been 13 episodes. So either we need 13 episode seasons for the next 3 seasons, or we need 5 seasons of 10 episodes. And when I say that, or we need 5 seasons, Breaking Bad, Mad Men, and Better Call Saul all had supersized final seasons aired in 2 halves. And in my mind, the middle of the story around season 3 is the thing you'd need to air in 2 halves to do it right, because the end, there isn't as much at the end. But depending on how you break it up, I think they should air in batches, or every 2 years a 13-episode season or something, because we've seen this, and season 1 worked pretty well. I even think you could address season 1 by like having a Rogue One Andor style made-for-TV movie that is 3 episodes worth of content, covering like a prequel to, this is young Cregan fighting his uncle. This is Jane Arryn becoming leader of the Vale. Just showing this is what was happening off screen in the 10-year gap, along with Rhaenyra and Harwin, Daemon, Lena. I think that could work. It would be a good idea. But later seasons, this worked pretty well. I don't blame the writers, because we know they were the ones arguing for more episodes this season. Going ahead into later seasons, the argument is for more episodes, not less. Stretching the material out was never an issue. And if you're worried, well, it's an outline, this outline covers sweeps of this dramatic history, and they've been able to fill it in pretty well. Episode 3, the fighting in the Stepstones and the Royal Hunt, was entirely invention. It was one of the better episodes of the season. So I think they can handle this quite well. So that was the first problem. Really, the only problem was pacing, and that they need more episodes. I said there's 2 big points of concern. The second of these is a balanced portrayal of gray characters. I genuinely think season 1 managed to do this, but it is a constant concern going ahead. Eternal vigilance to make sure they do this, that, the whole point of Walter White is that you're not supposed to be actively rooting for him. It's a character study. Or Tony Soprano killing a man. You're not always on his side, but it's a study of this character. Remember when Tyrion was this cool, morally gray character in the first few seasons? And then after they went off book, by the late show, it turned into Saint Tyrion, because the writers fell in love with him as this author avatar who can do no wrong. Most of the characters in this story, were supposed to be morally gray, and they really dropped the ball on that, or vilifying Stannis in ways that didn't make sense, or even the Daenerys stuff at the end, they were afraid to have her morally gray instead of morally black. And that I think my suspicion is they killed Daenerys. They made her so evil because people will blame us unless we ruin her as a character. And when the whole point is people shockingly killing people who might not deserve it. And they pull that shit all the time. Like, and what if, like with the Sand Snakes, once they realize they failed as characters, make them intentionally annoying in their next appearance so people won't mind when we kill them. I don't know who I'm more angry at, them or the people who were actually thanking them for killing off the annoying Sand Snakes. When it's like the threat they made to the Barristan Selmy actor, or shit Joss Whedon would say in Wonder Woman to the Wonder Woman and Cyborg actors, I will ruin your character so people don't blame me when I give you less to do. As a threat, that is a real thing in the industry. But the point is that they are when they're afraid to have a morally gray character, when the whole point is we're came here for these morally gray characters. That was one of the things that general TV audience reviewers brought up in their stuff for the first. I think they got screeners for the first 6 episodes. That you'd see quotes like this going, "There's no pure good character to root for like Ned Stark in this." And on top of that, going, "There's no funny character like Tyrion." And so humor can come from anywhere. Daemon makes quips all the time, and you kind of say, "Well, Daemon's funny. What are you talking about?" But that going, I'm not sure which side to root for is the point. They can't deal with that, something that promotes discussion like that. So there's always the fear that they're going to have Rhaenyra turn into this saintly figure, like they almost, they turned Daenerys into a saintly figure and a meme more than the nuanced character she is in the books, and then decided, oh wait, she's morally gray, but people will be mad at us if we kill her, so let's go the other way, make her so evil they won't yell at us. All of that. I'm not too worried about this because, again, the fact that so many people were complaining, I don't really like Rhaenyra, she is a morally gray character, means they did a good job. That the fact that so many reviews were making that complaint means mission accomplished. But I was worried about that later, but no, the fact that you see the ending shot of the season is Rhaenyra glaring over Luke's death, and she's going to do, if they follow the books and they're not afraid to do it, she's going to at least go along with, this is war, and we're doing what we have to do, and it's a constant tension. Similarly, Alicent's coming at it from the other point that they didn't want her to be a wicked stepmother. She isn't in the book. She is intelligent in ways Cersei isn't. That at the Green Council, even in the book version, she's the one arguing we need to try to win bloodlessly through diplomacy, if only because it's more pragmatic, that she's not a bloodthirsty maniac. She's like Olenna Tyrell. I'm even worried they played it a little too much trying to sympathize Alicent. But the actor's performance tying it together, it generally works, that she's a conflicted person, that she's in a bad situation, but then being horrified at Laris killing someone. There have been points where it was a little rough, but again, it's not based on a novel. It's an outline. They had to invent a lot of this. Broad strokes, it works. We can always argue about a specific episode. She's being too nice or too evil. I'm okay with that generally. Generally, this is one of the arguments we want to have over this specific line was too much. Daemon is the real point of concern here, that he's not supposed to be Saint Tyrion. He's supposed to be the Tyrion who kills people that we got in the fifth novel, A Dance with Dragons. Direct comparison to what Tyrion is, even though he's more Jaime-like. You don't want him to be this charming guy who, oh, he's amazing, look where that got us in late Game of Thrones. At the same time, I felt like him grabbing Rhaenyra to yell at her felt a little too on the nose. That there's better ways to show him as a morally gray character than resorting, because it brings baggage when you do that. You could have just had him shouting at her and being intimidating without laying hands on her. But again, I don't think that ruins the character. And I talked about this in my episode review, that it just brings up the issue of how do we show that, like, well, Daemon did kill his wife. I thought he killed her in the books, so I'm on the same page as Condal with that. He is probably, most people thought he killed Laenor in the books. I honestly thought he didn't. But this is this guy who was explicitly said to be both hero and villain, direct comparison to Book Tyrion. I don't want to see him, the term is flanderized, into the cool great guy. So I know, like, they took out scenes of him hugging Baela and Rhaena after Laena died. I think he would do that because Laena, if you're loyal to Daemon, he's generally loyal to you. I think they should have put that back in, but I understand their point of we don't want to get him too soft. And I do know they were paying attention to this. That's what really sells it for me, though, that the amount of times that they would. Condell says he's the character I spend the most time writing, that they're constantly picking out scenes that they filmed when they go, I think this scene went a little too far towards good, sometimes a little too far towards evil. That is a delicate tightrope walk. It's a balancing act of showing this character's morally gray, as opposed to, like Dexter probably came up these days, the serial killer show, Tony Soprano, there's all this, like Tyrion, you need to balance that these are flawed people, but don't put them on a pedestal. I generally think that the changes in season one, the points where they made Allison a little better, and they also dial back some of the things Rhaenyra allegedly did in the books, which I never believed, but that's me. It generally worked, but we are always going to be on that throughout the run of this show, because the selling point is it's morally gray and there's heroes on both sides. So I wouldn't even, when I originally made this list, it was three things, one big point, two minor points. I'm now saying there's two big points that we will always need to be concerned about. Pacing, when it's particularly hard because it's just an outline, and the balancing act of morally gray characters that you don't turn into pure heroes or villains is difficult. So the answer for the first one is simple. They need more episodes, and the success of season one, we probably will get that. And I kind of want a interquill Rogue One style special dealing with the younger cast members coming back. The thing about it, like Viserys, young Rhaenyra, and Harwin aren't in season two. They could easily film like a special or something. I have a whole video on that where I thought, heavy book analysis going, these are storylines they could do. This is how it could be like 2 hours worth of stuff. But that's me. Those are the two big issues. Two minor points, which you see I'm just shoving this in at the end here. I meant this to be 10 minutes. I might as well leave it at 30 minutes. Actually, both from episode 7. Laenor faking his death is a change from the books because he died in the marketplace. There's no way he could have faked his death. And as I said at the time, I'm surprisingly okay with it because I was also worried they'd have Daemon kill him when I was in the minority of people who thought Daemon wouldn't kill him, or probably didn't, or that at least Rhaenyra wasn't in on it as out of character. I don't have a problem with it in and of itself, but it raises, thankfully, other fan sites have pointed, mainstream sites have pointed out, that does raise the issue of in the books, his dragon Sea Smoke goes on to bond with someone else in the Civil War. Don't they only bond with one person? But we already worked out, like, it was a 6-year time skip. Maybe he died off screen, died as he wanted, a warrior's death fighting in the Stepstones, or I'd even accept a single, it's called hanging a lampshade on something, a hand wave throwaway line, or like Rhaenyra whispers to Daemon, why would Sea Smoke bond with someone else? Laenor might be still alive. He'll go, oh, well, in the histories of Valyria, it says that rarely a dragon could bond with someone else. It was his son, or he hadn't been there in a long time. Something to acknowledge the logical change that happened. And I will accept it with a wink and a grin. Because I'd rather, for Laenor as a character, that actually worked pretty well. And it's playing with the unreliable narrator thing. That actually covers a lot of, well, the historians, by definition, historians wouldn't know if you faked your death. But the Sea Smoke question is something they need to do in season 2. I wouldn't even call it a problem. And the last point is, I'm going to make a separate video about this, the day for night lighting issues in episode 7. And I'm against people who compare this to the Long Night Battle in Season 8, where that was not Sapochnik's fault, that we know from all the behind-the-scenes stuff. Benioff and Weiss wanted it to be that dark. It is frightening just how much planning went into that for months, where there's even the lighting they make concept art of lighting levels. They'll show him artwork, and it's almost black. It looks like what the screen was in the behind-the-scenes materials, and they go, this was our concept art of this, and Benioff and Weiss signed off on it. This is the light level they wanted. It wasn't a last-minute accident. And we know the VFX team was fighting with them from the commentary track, saying they were going to them going, you can't see the CGI. Do you understand you spent millions of dollars on Dragon CGI you can't see? And they would overrule them. Then why are we bothering to make it in the first place? But that's separate. They actually filmed the Long Night stuff at night. And I've explained this, that you can't undarken something that was filmed at night because light is information in your camera. There's nothing to undarken. In contrast, day for night filming you do this thing where you change the exposure and lower the light levels. It actually looks in the saturation to make it look like night. And it works in short bursts. I think they were overconfident in it in this episode, but there have been great night scenes in this season, even by Sapochnik himself. And like episode 1, so I don't know what went on here, and I'm still researching it. I think they just overdid it. And even Ryan Condal has admitted in interviews recently, yeah, that didn't really work as well as it looked on our master print. Difference is, this wasn't filmed at night. You couldn't fix the long night in post because it was filmed at night. This was filmed in the day, and they overused the day for night filter. Ask a simple question, don't they still have the master prints that were filmed in daylight? Why not just remaster it for the Blu-ray release in 5 months, and then update it for HBO Max and everything? Just dialing, it's not even a big thing, it just dial back the day for night effect a little. Okay? Is that too much to ask? I mean, we could still do that. Things get remastered all the time. You plausibly could remaster this, is my point, because they have the original footage. The original footage from Long Night is useless because it was filmed in blackness. And, there's really 3 scenes, one of which is a sex scene, which you don't need to be bright. But the Rhaenyra and Daemon walking on the beach, that was mostly a dialogue-heavy scene anyway, though it's a little too dark. And Aemon's claiming Vagar. I realize it's supposed to be middle of the night on a poorly lit beach, but we're using the conceit that it's moonlight, so I don't know. I kind of want them to clean up those 2 scenes. Just as, I don't even list this as a problem. There was like episode 3, they accidentally forgot to green screen out the green screen finger gloves that Viserys was wearing, because he's supposed to lost 2 fingers. And like, I didn't notice that. And when I went and rewatched it, I can see how you'd miss that because his hand is in shadow. That whoever was doing it missed that, oh, wait, you can see his hand in that shot. We should have green screened out his fingers. It wasn't like a coffee cup right up front or something. It was, oh, I had to check to see that. Hey, they said we'll go back and remaster that. Why not remaster? Just dial back the day for night effect. But this was a one-shot thing, and I've heard, like, why did they do it so much? It's something about there were storms on the beach that led to a lot of visual discontinuities. They tried to hide it by darkening it, is what I've heard, which that only makes it worse. You traded one problem for another. Now we're complaining you can't see anything, and we don't care if the sand dunes look the same between every shot. But that wasn't a systemic problem that generally, I'm going to make videos on this and admit there was a one time they overused day for night. They have done night scenes really well in this season, putting to shame the lighting problems, not just in season 8, but like the entire second half of Game of Thrones, where they insisted it has to be natural lighting, and fighting with cinematographers that we can't see anything. So, in summary, pacing, the internal pacing of a given episode is always good. This is what Supercuts Delight said. You need more than 10 episodes per season to tell this story, and that's an argument for either more seasons, more episodes per season, or split seasons in 2 halves. A lot of things are doing that these days. It's point 1, pacing, more episodes. Point 2, ongoing vigilance about the balanced portrayal of morally gray and morally ambiguous characters, which I think season 1 did well. We will always have to be on guard with that. And the 2 minor things are, mention something in season 2 about how are they going to address Sea Smoke bonding to a new rider, and the lighting problems in episode 7, which are specific things. And this is like half an hour stuff. These are my sole complaints. They're not even complaints about the whole season. The pacing thing, I was on their side. They were on our side. They wanted more episodes. They are the ones really paying attention to. They have to be morally gray. We can't have Daemon be good all the time. It would Disneyfy him like they did Tyrion. Uh, I am pretty much okay with their portrayal on this. Now, there's other issues other people might have, such as uh, the portrayal of women. I generally think they did well, but I'm not a woman. There have been complaints brought up by other channels of mainstream LGBTQ media review channels going, I don't think they portrayed the gay characters prominently enough. There are more gay characters that come in next season, is the answer I'll give for that. That, well, this is what happens to Laenor in the book. He gets written out or dies or whatever. I've already discussed that, but more characters in terms of representation criticisms, which I'm not really in a position to give, or the race stuff. Some people have said Bela and Rhaena were underused. Well, they that's as much as they do at this point in the story in the book. And by that logic, well, Rhaenyra's younger sons, Aegon and Viserys, don't have a lot to do now, but they are really major characters later. It's the first season. They could have been Luke dying in one season. That they're do we give them more in terms of race as a whole? Corlys gets a lot to do, but I can see that as a plausible criticism. You understand my point? I think they handled that well. That, well, Corlys gets a lot to do. One thing is, will Bela and Rhaena get more to do? But then that ties back to, well, we're not upset at how you portrayed Bela and Rhaena as a stereotype or something. It's we wanted more screen time. That just ties right back into point one. You need more episodes. Like, I'd like them to invent stuff for Bela to do with her Dragon Moon Dancer and Rhaena trying to hatch some, but that's more of a we need more episodes problem, I think. So generally, that's my views on season one. The rest of this would just be me praising season one, things like, look how good they got the cinematography in this episode. I wouldn't change really that much from season one, other than we needed more episodes. So please tell me in the comments what you think, and like and subscribe for more, because I have a whole series of videos I wanted to do during the run of season one, analysis videos I'm going to be catching up on for the next couple of months.